Hi, this is Richard Barrett for Guitarist magazine, and I'm here today with 5 new Marshall pedals. Each one of them is based on a classic amp from their lineup, and they go in chronological order from the 1959 Plexi through to the JCM 800, the 900, the DSL, and then finally the JVM, which is the ultimate development of the high gain, really. So I've plugged into a clean Fender amp as a bass, and we're going to use these as what they're supposed to be, a Marshall in a box. Moving, as I said, chronologically through the range, I've started here with the 1959 Plexi. I'm going to put my readers on so that I can read the knobs properly. And as you can see, we have the volume and tone. That's common to all of these. And as a nod to the control lineup on the Plexi, it's got a high treble sensitivity and a normal. So that's bright and normal. Let's hear the bass tone that I'm using. It's a clean tone. So to my tired old ears, that represents a fairly flat, clean sound to be working with. Now, if I click this on, I've preset kind of sounds on each of these that I think are a good starting point. It would have been easy to go in with everything facing up, but I don't know that that's the best way to do this because every rig has its own idiosyncrasies, and going into the Fender combo, this is what sounded the best to me. So I'll start that again. Without, with. So there's what I've decided to start with. I should emphasize that the fine adjustment on these controls really gives you quite a range of sounds. A really small amount can make a big difference. So the overall characteristic of this pedal is that slightly loose bottom end, especially on the normal channel, and you bring the high treble in and that gives you some definition. I'll make a few more sounds, then I'll talk some more. To get more of a focus, I'm going to bring the high treble up, and as you're about to hear, that can get a little bit sharp. That's a little bit snarly for my taste, so I'm going to bring the tone down and change the voicing of the pedal. So you can see these are very versatile. You can get a lot from a little adjustment. What about if I try this the other way? Bring the high treble down, the normal up. This will probably be quite boomy, so in anticipation of that, I'm bringing the tone up to just over halfway. Let's see what we get. It's much louder, so I'm going to bring that back down. So there's a lot more bottom and top. It's almost a bit scooped there. I would be interested to run this like a 1959 Super Lead and maybe run a Tube Screamer into it or something like that. I think that that would give quite an authentic result. And the volume, the way that I've got these set, the volume seems to be defaulting about between 6 and 8 on these. Let's try a little bit of the sort of straight up, see what we get. Right, I might see if I can get a bit of a Clapton thing happening here. And maybe just to finish off with here, let's try a really slight, like a bass tone. I mean that B-A-S-E rather than bass guitar. So if I go for something that's as close as possible to that clean, well, that's off. That's not very helpful. Like I say, really fine adjustment. And let's... There is a pedal maker that makes these drive pedals and calls them a foundation drive. So sometimes, especially if you're running a super clean rig and you know you want some super clean sounds, but you also want something like this, then that could be an excellent starting point for adding further boosts or drives to stack on top of it. So that's a little overview of the 1959 Plexi. Let's move on. Next up, I've got the JCM 800. So what I've done here is I've set up the kind of sound that I feel that people who are going to buy a pedal that says JCM 800 on it, the kind of tone that they'd be looking for. So glasses on. Let's have a reminder of the clean tone. And then let's have a look at what I've set up. What I've done here is I've set the sensitivity high. Now that control represents the low and high inputs on the original amp, but rather than just plugging into the low or the high, you can actually dial it. So I've gone for high input 100%. So why don't I start perhaps by demonstrating the sweep of that. As you can see, I've got the gain set a little bit lower here. It's below halfway. And that seems to give a chunkier sound. None of these really get that super bright sound with the gain down, but this does tighten up a bit on the low end. You'll see that I've got the tone set quite low. I switched between the clean and the distorted sound to get what I felt was about right. And this will go extremely bright, actually, this one. So let's take that sensitivity down to half. That's not a different world, but it is different. And then down, and then off. That represents the low gain input, and I think you'd need to absolutely max the volume on that to get parity gain. My preference personally is... Then if we get that gain up a little bit, now that's going to fatten things up too. Let's get it up all the way and see what we get. That gives a nice thickness on the single notes, especially in the high register, though you will notice that it loosens up a bit at the bottom, which is what a real Marshall head would do. Let's hear it with a bit more tone on it. I personally find this bright, but let's hear it. I'm bearing in mind that what I find too bright might be exactly what someone else is looking for. That's annoying. So let's just check out the... So that's where I'm coming from with this pedal. I think if you A-B'd it with a real JCM 800, then you're bound to hear some differences. But I think if you're plugged into a clean amp, which I should mention is a Fender Blues Deluxe, then I'm thinking that's a very credible representation of that type of sound. Here we have the JCM 900 then, that's the next in the series. Now this has also got the 4-knob lineup and it's got the tone and the volume like all the others have. But what we have in terms of controls here is we have the gain, obviously, and we have a contour button. Now, if I'm wrong about this, then somebody please drop in the comment and put me right on which model of the JCM 900 had a contour control, because I don't remember one. But it is nevertheless a very useful control that gives you a kind of broad boost of the mids or a broad scoop depending which way you have it. Now I'll do another reminder of the basic tone and then we'll hear what I've set up as a default sound on the pedal. hear that it's got a bit of that high-end, I always call it snark, that you get with the JCM 900. I can probably tune that out. And it gets a little bit more round, but the JCM 900 it is what it is, if you see what I mean, and I think it's good to work with it. So you'll see I've got the contour maxed. Now that's with the mids set high. If I take that down to halfway, I don't want to talk and play at the same time because it makes it very hard to listen to these videos. So there's the smiley face EQ if we had a graphic EQ. And let's go extreme and go down to 0. I can hear the booming bass and the sharp treble there, which might be what you want. Depends on the way you've got your amp set up and what rig. So halfway, I suppose, is flat. But I just was happier hearing your experience may vary. So let's have a listen to what happens if we bring the gain up a bit. I've gone down to around about the 3 mark because doing E, A and D and looking to chunk things up a little bit, that works better. But if I come up to halfway, we start to get quite dirty. You can still get some chunk out of it, but you have to be careful. And then if I bring it up to, say, 8, and I'm thinking bring the master volume down a little bit to compensate. What happens if I come down a bit there on that contour? I think it's a bit sweeter with the mids in, but that's a lead sound as opposed to a rhythm, really. There's no shortage of gain there. And I'll say again what I said earlier, is that these are supposed to sound like the amp. And in the real world, using the amp, I generally found that I'd set a rhythm sound and then I'd set a boost going into the front. Maybe a tube screamer or a super overdrive tended to be my preference because it was slightly less honky on the mids. But that represents a JCM 900 type tone for sure. Now, something that I didn't do with the last pedal that I'm going to do with this one is 0 the gain, max the volume. And you'll see that like an amp, I mean, it's a bit low on the volume there, to be honest with that, but that will give you a sound, might be useful for recording. Not really designed for running the gain on 0, to be honest. But so with things straight up, we start to get that quite sharp sound that I do associate, rightly or wrongly, with the JCM 900. As I say, the contour isn't something I remember from the lineup. I thought they were bass, middle, treble, presence and gain. But what the contour does is it is a nod towards giving you that EQ control as well as the tone. So it is quite a versatile pedal. There are probably a lot of sounds in this that I haven't managed to show you, but that's the 900. Moving forward to the tail end of the 90s, about 97 I think, we've got the DSL dual super lead. They were the JCM 2000s. Now, they were a split channel amp, so you had a green channel and a red channel. The red channel, quite famously, would get quite bright with the gain set lower and get really full and fruity as the gain went up. The green channel would keep the bass as you go down. It didn't seem to have a bright cap. So I actually had one of these at the time and I had the bright cap snipped on the red channel. I think it was called the C12 mod. That's what this pedal reminds me of. It does actually remind me very much of that particular amp. So I'm going to do the same thing I've done with all the others, and that is put my glasses on, give you a reminder of the clean tone, and then we'll have a listen to the default that I've set up. Now, something that the DSL did have was a button for the deep switch. It also had a mid-cut button, though this pedal doesn't have that. So I had set the deep, we have a rotary control for that here, so the deep is continuously variable. Now, going from the clean sound to the distorted sound I'd set, I think I might have left the deep control a little bit low, so I'm going to turn that up to almost halfway. And compare with clean. Split the difference. To my mind, you can get all kinds of special effecty things, almost like if I max that deep control, it really will boom. I can't bear to hear too much of that in the room. It makes my head vibrate. So I hope that will be enough for you, and then I'll zero it. So, I mean, that's thinned out the bass end. Maybe a little bit. Actually, I think perhaps I was right after all with the deep set about 2. Getting tones can drive you mad, can't it? But this tone control, I'd set it at about 3.5. Let's try dropping it a bit from there. Bit more volume. I suppose, without realising it, I'm showing you the process that you go through to choose your sounds with these pedals. As you can see, the gain is down at about 2. There might be a little bit more gain than there was on the original heads, actually, though you can zero that. Again, you end up with a bit of a gain drop that's hard to make up with the volume. I don't think that's a design fault, I just think that's how the amps were. And I think that if you get a DSL pedal, then you're not really looking for it to do the job of a Boss Blues driver, for instance. So let's take that back up to where it was. It's a very satisfying sound to play. There's the right amount of mids there. Let's take that gain up to about 8, which is going to be extreme. It makes that kind of playing come out how you would hope to hear it, well, I would hope to hear it. So I'm going to take things back down to about halfway, and then I'm going to just show you a little bit about the tone control, really, and the range of sounds with that. I've set it to what I think is roughly kind of parity, so the guitar doesn't suddenly get really bright or really boomy. But if I bring that up to halfway, I think we're going to hear quite a lot of brightness. Sort of treble, high, mid. It's a shelf, really, going from about, I don't know, about 3K perhaps. I'm careful about that kind of EQing because sometimes you get what I've read about as an EQ hangover. Nothing sounds good to you because you've just gone to so many extremes. So just giving all of our ears a moment to settle. Let's have another. So it's starting to get that real modern rock sound to it. It's very focused. I think that you could use this without a boost pedal, though I think it would also sound really good with one if you wanted to do a kind of mini rig pedal board with this functioning as the amp. So I think that hopefully will give you an idea of what you're getting if you buy the DSL pedal. Finally, we have the JVM, which represents the most recent amp from Marshall's line. Now, from memory, the JVM was a 4-channel beast, and I've got a feeling there was a version with an integral noise gate, though perhaps somebody will be able to correct me in the comments if that's not the case. Now, we have a lineup of 4 controls. Again, now what fooled me at first, puts glasses on, is that the volume is at the other end, opposite end to the gain. With volume, tone, overall kind of high shelf, and the gate, which is off at the moment, and I've put the gain about halfway. So I'm going to recap the clean tone and then click this on. I couldn't resist doing something a bit chunky there because there is a kind of tuned bass boost. I don't know whether that's actually a fact. It feels like there is. It's got that thud that you might expect to hear from a 4x12 cab. It is a Marshall in a box after all. So let's compare again. I mean, there's a slight lift in volume when I put the pedal on because I've set it that way. I often find that in isolation, dirty tones need to be a little bit louder than clean tones because otherwise the opposite happens when you're in a band mix. The dirty tones tend to disappear. It can make sound technicians nervous, but that's just the way of the world and I guess they'll have to get used to it. Gain here is set about halfway. Let's try reducing that and seeing what we get. So I think you can get quite a retro AC/DC tone up. This is the least bright of all of them actually, though I don't mind that personally. There's plenty available at the top. Already backing it off. That was enough of that. I still haven't used the gate, but we'll get there in a minute. So let's just go a little bit higher here. I don't know if you can hear there, but in the room, I'm hearing some hiss. My habit with tones like that is to roll the volume off immediately because at any serious volume, you're going to get problems. You might not though, if you bring in this gate. So let's see. It's a good gate. I mean, you don't want it set too heavy. I mean, you might as a special effect. We'll go there in a minute. But I'm thinking... that's a little bit extreme. I'm going to back the gain off and put the gate on about halfway. And I'm just going to see... doing that kind of time-honoured thing of using the guitar's volume control to control the gain. Let's see how useful it is. I mean, you can't expect miracles. At some point, the gate will close, and if you go too quiet, then it's not going to work. But this does a really good job of surfing that line. I mean, if I zero the volume, there's no hiss. There's nothing. I mean, that's dirty. That's enough for a lead. And you can come down to about halfway or 3. you can sort of hear the gate wanting to kick in there, though I reckon with a fine adjustment that could work very well. Let me see, let's go for absolutely maxed out gain and absolutely maxed out gate. I'm going to take that off for a minute just to show you what the gate's doing. Right, there's one aspect of it. A little bit flabby, as you would expect. So with the gate on, we're doing a bit more of a dime bag vibe, I suppose. So it does actually give you some of that sound. All right, you know, I'm not really a metal player, but that will show you the sort of vibe there. But moving back to a more conservative setting, I might just show you the tone control. All right, good to know it's there. Good to know that's there too, but really the sweet spot to my ears with this rig and this guitar is just a little crack over 5, I think. And if you want to get a little bit more, I mean, these aren't EMGs and I'm going for that whole Zach thing. So, my feeling is that whatever kind of gain sounds you want, one of these is going to get you there. They're really heavily built. They're designed to be schlepped around on pedal boards. Nice clear indication of when they're on or off. I mean, you'll hear the difference probably, but we all know what being on stage with bad monitoring is like, so it's nice to have the reassurance of knowing that it's most definitely on or off. I think that as with any new amp, there's a period of getting to know it and knowing exactly where the sweet spots are for you on the controls. And I'm pretty sure that Marshall are going to have a lot of success with these. I think they're really good. So I hope that this has been helpful to you, and see you another time.